World leaders gathered in Bishkek for the Collective Security Treaty Organization Summit, where Russian President Vladimir Putin unveiled a sweeping new military initiatives that has reshaped the security landscape of Eurasia. The Russian leader presented a strategic vision for 2026 that includes arming allied nations with advanced battlefield-tested weaponry such as hypersonic missiles and elite drone systems. This move is designed to transform the alliance into a formidable counterweight to NATO and Western influence. During the summit, President Putin held a significant meeting with Tajik President Emomali Rahmon, where both leaders celebrated a 20% increase in bilateral trade and the absence of any unresolved political issue between their nations. To further cement these ties, Putin invited Rahmon to an informal meeting of leaders in St. Petersburg scheduled for late December. The drive for deeper integration extended beyond Central Asia as North Korea announced that the Russian language would become a compulsory school subject starting from the 4th grade, signaling a long-term commitment to cultural and educational alignment with Moscow. Meanwhile, Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko delivered a stark warning to the assembly, describing his country as standing inside a besieged fortress due to acute border threats and what he characterized as the collapse of global arms control mechanism. Lukashenko urged his allies to recognize that Western nations are boosting their military capabilities and enforcing isolation through sanctions, arguing that the time for a unified pan-Eurasian security blueprint has arrived. Diplomatic relations between Moscow and the West remain volatile following the release of leaked audio recording involving United States officials and Russian diplomats. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova dismissed the reported conversation between United States envoy Steve Witkoff and Russian aide Yuri Ushakov as a fabrication designed to disrupt upcoming diplomatic contact. President Putin later addressed the leak directly, suggesting that the tapes might reflect an intense struggle of opinions within Washington regarding how to end the conflict rather than official policy. He noted that his private discussion with President Donald Trump and his envoys has shown mutual understanding before new sanctions interfere with the process. Tensions escalated further when Zakharova leveled a serious allegation against the United States, claiming that a Florida-based company named RMS International was covertly recruiting Filipino citizens, including retired police and military personnel, to fight for Ukrainian forces. He alleged that these recruits were being issued Schengen work visas through the German consular office in Manila to facilitate their travel. Simultaneously, Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Alexander Grushko warned that the European Union is restructuring its economy and logistics for a direct military clash with Russia, describing the relationship as being in a deep crisis where European leaders believe conflict is inevitable. Significant adjustments have been made to the peace framework proposed by the United States to end the war in Ukraine, following intense negotiations and a critical meeting in Geneva. The original 28 points plan drafted by the administration of President Donald Trump has been refined down to 19 provisions. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky acknowledged that the new framework takes into account many of the right elements and removes some of the most contentious requirements, such as the immediate surrender of the Luhansk and Donetsk region. Washington and Kyiv have described this revised draft as a refined peace framework that bridged previous differences, and Zelensky indicated a readiness to discuss sensitive issues directly with President Trump. However, political friction continues within Ukraine as Member of Parliament Alexei Gonsharenko accused President Zelensky of lacking a credible strategy and allowing wartime corruption to hinder progress. Despite the diplomatic adjustment in Geneva, Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov affirmed that Moscow would not make concessions on key issues, and Kremlin officials insisted that the United States sanctions are currently destroying the potential for a relationship. President Trump sought to ease expectations for rapid settlement by stating that talks would continue without rigid deadlines. leaving the timeline for any potential agreement uncertain. Russian President Vladimir Putin used his platform in Kyrgyzstan to clarify his position on the potential peace deal and the legitimacy of the current Ukrainian government. He declared that signing any binding documents with the current leadership in Kyiv is pointless, arguing that they made a strategic mistake by avoiding elections. Putin insisted that while Russia is open to serious negotiations, any ceasefire is conditional on Ukrainian forces withdrawing from all territories claimed by Moscow, including the Donbas region and Crimea. He framed this demand as a strict ultimatum, stating that hostilities would only cease if Kyiv agreed to pull back its troops. Otherwise, the Russian military would continue its offensive to achieve its objective by force. The Russian leader questioned the legal authority of the Ukrainian administrations to sign final agreements and suggested that negotiations should primarily happen with Washington. He also addressed the economic dimensions of the conflict, noting that Russia has successfully pivoted toward Asia but remains open to economic engagement with Europe if Western leaders decide to accept current geopolitical realities. This hardline stance suggests that while diplomatic channels remain open, the gap between Moscow's demands and Kyiv's refusal to cede territory remains a formidable obstacle to peace. The situation on the battlefield remains critical as Russian forces report significant advances across multiple sectors in eastern Ukraine. The Russian Defense Ministry announced that its units have entered the area north of Pokrovsk and have extended their offensive operation around the town of Myrnorad, aiming to encircle Ukrainian defense. Moscow claimed to have seized control of the village of Vasyukovka near the Siversk direction and reported inflicting heavy casualties on Ukrainian troops over the past 24 hours. Russian reports describe the use of pincer tactics designed to force Ukrainian units to withdraw or face total encirclement, particularly in the Donetsk region, which serves as a major logistical hub. In contrast, the Ukrainian army stated that it had repelled dozens of attacks in the Pokrovsk directions and continued to deplete advancing Russian force, describing the city as a gray zone that is not yet under full control of either party. Fighting has also intensified in the Zaporizhia region, where Russian troops are launching airstrikes on fortifications and expanding their control near Mariupol. Belarusian President Lukashenko criticized President Zelensky for ignoring these battlefield realities, warning that the refusal to negotiate based on the current situation could lead to the collapse of the Ukrainian defense lines and the loss of remaining southern territories. If you have made it this far, congratulations, you have unlocked the truth. I want to ask you a quick question though. With the revised US peace plan dropping the demand for Russia to surrender Donbas and Putin simultaneously arming CSTO allies with hypersonic missiles, are we witnessing a genuine path to diplomacy or just a strategic pause for rearmament? The sharp contradiction between the diplomatic refinements seen in Geneva and the aggressive military expansion unveiled in Bishkek suggests a complex dual track, considering North Korea is now making Russian mandatory in schools and the CSTO is solidifying into a NATO counterweight. Do you believe this 19-point framework can actually end the war when Moscow insists on territorial recognition, and why? Join the debate. We want to hear your insightful opinion on what this is all heading in our community. Share your thoughts in the comments below. I appreciate your support. Thank you for being a part of this journey. Like the video, share this video with friends and family, hit the notification bell, and most importantly, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one.